The Miller family was on a journey to escape the suffocation of the city. They yearned for peace, for tranquility, their destination, a secluded cabin nestled deep within the woods. Jana, the mother, smiled, her eyes reflecting the golden hues of the setting sun. Sean, her husband, gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white with anticipation. They carried with them the heavy baggage of their past, hoping to bury it beneath the roots of ancient trees and the silence of the wilderness. The cabin, though weathered by time, stood with a quiet dignity. Exhausted but exhilarated, the family gathered in the dimly lit living room. This was their sanctuary, their refuge from the world, or so they thought. The first few days passed in a blur of unpacking and exploring. The woods, alive with the sights and sounds of nature, welcomed them. But as the days turned into nights, a subtle unease began to creep into their newfound paradise. It started with whispers, faint, almost indistinguishable murmurs that seemed to drift from the depths of the forest. April, the elder daughter, was the first to notice. "Emily, do you hear that? It's like the forest is talking," she confided in Emily, her cousin, but Emily dismissed it as April's overactive imagination. One evening, as the family gathered for dinner, the whispers escalated into a chorus. The forest, once a source of solace, now felt like a living, breathing entity, watching them, judging them. The tension in the cabin was as thick as the humid summer air. The whispers in the woods had cast a pall over the family, driving a wedge between them. Jana, her nerves frayed by the unsettling events, found herself snapping at Sean over the smallest things. "Sean, can't you see? Something is terribly wrong here." Sean, frustrated by his inability to protect his family from the unseen menace, retreated into himself. "I'm doing the best I can, Jana. Just give me a break." April, haunted by the whispers and increasingly isolated from her family, retreated further into herself. The once vibrant teenager now moved through the cabin like a ghost, her silence speaking volumes. The already strained relationship between April and Emily reached a boiling point. Emily, desperate to cling to a sense of normalcy, refused to acknowledge the whispers. "Emily, please, you have to believe me. There's something out there." "You're being ridiculous, April. There's nothing out there but trees and a few squirrels." April, her voice trembling with barely suppressed panic, tried to explain the chilling intensity of the whispers. But Emily, her mind made up, refused to listen. She turned on her heel, leaving April alone with her growing terror. Nick, April's younger brother, watched the escalating tension with a mixture of concern and annoyance. Determined to prove to Emily that her fears were not unfounded, I convinced a reluctant Nick to venture into the woods with me. The air hung heavy and still, the silence broken only by the crunch of leaves beneath their feet. The sunlight filtering through the dense canopy of leaves created an eerie, dappled effect on the forest floor. "See, it's just a normal forest, nothing to be scared of." Nick, his senses on high alert, wasn't so sure. He couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. The hair on the back of his neck prickled with a primal fear, and then they heard it. A faint whisper carried on the breeze, slithering through the trees. They were no longer alone in the woods. Driven by a mixture of fear and morbid curiosity, April and Nick stumbled upon an old well, hidden deep within the woods. Its moss-covered stone and crumbling edges whispered of years of neglect. We should go back. The unsettling feeling of being watched intensified. April, however, seemed transfixed by the well. Ignoring Nick's pleas to leave, April cautiously approached the well. As she finally dragged the last of the chain free, a chilling gust of wind erupted from the well, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of decay. At the end of the rusty chain lay not a bucket, but a child's wooden doll. Its once bright paint was faded and scratched, its porcelain face cracked, revealing a disturbingly sinister grin. What is that? He couldn't tear his gaze away from the doll. April, her hand trembling, reached out and picked up the doll. As soon as her fingers brushed against its cold, rough surface, the whispers surrounding them intensified. A swirling mass of shadows coalesced behind them, twisting into the form of a tall, skeletal figure. April stumbled back, dropping the doll with a clatter. It was horrible. We saw it, Mom. We saw the thing in the woods. Start from the beginning. Tell us everything. April and Nick, their faces pale and streaked with tears, burst into the cabin, slamming the door shut behind them. They huddled together, gasping for breath, their words tumbling over each other in their haste to recount the horrifying encounter. Jana and Sean, alerted by their children's panicked arrival, rushed to their sides. Concern etched their features as they listened to their fragmented story. Sean, his brow furrowed with worry, wrapped a protective arm around his daughter. The woods, once a symbol of hope and a fresh start, were now a source of terror. The following morning dawned bright and clear. The forest bathed in the golden light of a new day, but the tranquility of the scene did little to ease the tension that had gripped the Miller family. Emily was gone. At first, they told themselves she had simply gone for a walk. But as the hours stretched into midday, their forced optimism crumbled. A frantic search was organized, their calls for Emily echoing through the silent woods unanswered. The forest remained silent, its secrets closely guarded beneath its emerald canopy. With each passing hour, the family's fear morphed into a suffocating paranoia. The whispers, once a distant murmur, now seemed to press in on them. Michael, usually the calm and collected voice of reason, now moved through the cabin like a caged animal. We need to stick together. No one goes anywhere alone, not even during the day. April, already teetering on the edge of hysteria, retreated further into herself. The whispers, louder now, seemed to whisper her name, fueling her paranoia. The forest, once a symbol of hope and a fresh start, had become their prison. The weight of Emily's disappearance hung heavy in the air, a suffocating presence that pushed the family to the brink. Accusations flew like poison darts, each barb finding its mark. It's your fault. You and your stupid stories about whispers and monsters. You scared her, drove her away. Don't you dare blame April for this. We don't know what happened, but we're all scared, and blaming each other won't bring Emily back. Nick, caught in the crossfire of their venomous words, shrank back. The weight of their fear, the raw grief that permeated the cabin, was suffocating. The forest, silent and watchful, held its breath, waiting, listening, as the whispers grew louder. The cabin creaked and groaned under the weight of their shared terror. The storm outside raged with a fury that mirrored the turmoil within their hearts. Emily's disappearance had shattered the fragile remnants of their unity, leaving behind a residue of suspicion and blame. We can't go on like this. We're letting fear tear us apart. She's right. We have to stick together for each other, for Emily. A flicker of understanding passed between April and Nick. The shared terror, the chilling encounters in the woods, had forged a bond between them, stronger than the resentment and petty jealousies that had plagued their relationship before. They knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that their survival depended on their unity. What do you suggest we do? We've searched everywhere, called her name until our voices were hoarse. The woods have taken her, and they're not giving her back. We fight back. We find out what's happening, what took Emily, and we don't stop until we get her back. A new resolve settled over them, fragile yet unwavering. They were a family, broken but not shattered, and they would face the darkness together. The storm raged on, a symphony of wind and rain that lashed at their faces as they ventured deeper into the heart of the woods. Armed with flashlights that cut feeble swathes through the impenetrable darkness, they moved as one, their fear a palpable presence that clung to them like a shroud. The whispers were everywhere, swirling around them, taunting them, urging them deeper into the labyrinthine embrace of the forest. They spoke of secrets, of ancient evils, of a darkness that consumed all who dared to defy it. This way, she led them along a winding path, her steps sure, her eyes fixed on a point in the distance that only she seemed to see. The path led them to a clearing, the air thick with an oppressive silence that stood in stark contrast to the raging storm around them. The old well, its moss-covered stones slick with rain, stood in the center, its dark opening a gaping maw that seemed to beckon them closer. A shiver ran down Nick's spine. This was the place where it had all begun, where the whispers had taken shape, where they had glimpsed the face of the darkness that now held Emily captive. This is it. This is where we find the answers. They gathered around the well, their faces grim, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. The storm raged around them, the wind whipping through the trees like a banshee's wail, but in that moment, all they could hear were the whispers, louder than ever, beckoning them, urging them to take the next step, to descend into the abyss. Jana clutched Sean's hand, their fingers intertwined, seeking strength in their shared terror. Michael stood rigid, his face a mask of grief and rage, his eyes fixed on the abyss that had swallowed his daughter. Nick, his young face pale and drawn, stood close to April, drawing courage from his sister's unwavering resolve. "Emily, are you there?" Silence. Only the relentless pounding of the rain and the mournful sigh of the wind answered her plea. And then, from the depths of the well, a sound, a low, guttural growl, laced with an ancient malice that sent shivers crawling down their spines. The growl morphed into a whisper, a chorus of voices, weaving a tapestry of sorrow and despair. April, as if in a trance, leaned closer to the edge of the well, her gaze fixed on the impenetrable darkness within. The whispers seemed to call to her, their voices weaving around her like tendrils of smoke. They're trapped, they want to be free. They would face the darkness, confront the evil that lurked within the well. They would fight not only for Emily, but for all those who had been lost, their voices silenced by the whispers of the wood.